everybody, welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about the health assessment skills video submissions. I said before in my last video that I was going to go ahead and talk about that in pretty great detail, so let's go ahead and get started. Just to preface this, this could be a long video, so I apologize in advance if it's a little too long. I just really want to make sure that I give as much detail as possible so I can help you guys throughout this process, because it's definitely kind of difficult figuring it out for the first time. So if I can just relieve some stress, that's kind of what I'm here for, as far as, you know, making things easier for you during your health assessment skills video process. So it might be a little bit all over the place because I didn't honestly write anything down ahead of time. I'm just kind of go as I think of ideas. But the first thing that I would say is for you to have either a camera, a phone, one of the two that records, obviously, and a tripod. And I definitely recommend like those flexible tripods at the small ones. I'm gonna try to put pictures up as I talk about it so that it's not, in case you don't know what I'm talking about. But that's the first thing that I recommend, because I'll explain later why it's really important, but you really want a nice camera that, you know, it's not blurry, that they can see exactly what you're doing. And you want a flexible tripod because you're gonna be moving your camera around all the time, and you're going to be putting it in kind of strange places when you're, like, for example, if you're if you're assessing the abdominal wall, the best view would be to kind of put it from somewhere high and kind of it angled downwards. So you definitely want a tripod that's flexible so you can kind of move it around certain things, and I'll get more into that later. My second piece of advice, which actually should have been my first, is so you're going to be obviously assessing a patient. If you can either have somebody video record for you, whether you want to, you know, get a friend or a family member or a neighbor, that would probably be your best bet, because that way you don't need to worry about, oh, I need to place the camera here, oh, I need to move my patient here, because your videographer so to speak will be following you, and, you know, based off what you're doing, they can follow you and really show the professors exactly what you're doing. But not everybody is lucky enough to have someone to be able to videotape for them. So this video is more for people that don't have somebody to videotape for them. I'm gonna do obviously some more in-depth advice later on if you want to listen to it, but I would really recommend you find someone to videotape for you. If you cannot, that's fine too. I actually was not able to find someone to come help videotape me, as far as I would really trust their angles and making sure that, because I knew what I want the angle to look like, and it was just easier for me to do it myself. So if you prefer someone to help you out, great. If not, you can keep listening and I'll tell you just some more pieces of advice. So when you do these video submissions, I really want you to think of it as serious as possible. You know, lights, camera, action. You are the actor, you're the producer, you're the director. You need good lighting, you need good camera angles, and I don't mean to be dramatic, but make it sure that it's serious. Don't, you know, make it like it's like a selfie or anything like that. Like, this is very serious. This is you showing your professors your skills, and not only do you want to do your skills correctly, but you want to make sure that your professor can actually see what you're doing. You need to, first of all, you need to find a place that you can easily have your patient be. There's no distractions, there's no noise, there's good lighting, making sure that you can move around as you please, making sure there's room for you to put your supplies. That is the first thing. Make sure that you find a good room, good lighting, somewhere where you can have enough time to video record and that you're not distracting anyone or no one's distracting you. So that would be something that you really need to start off first doing. Another thing is that you want to have a room that's enough room for you to do what you need to do, but you want to have accessibility to things kind of at your reach. So if you're in this huge room, you have tons of space, which is great, but then if your supplies are all the way over there, you're taking up time to go get your supplies. And usually these video submissions are timed. So each one that I had to do, you had, you know, really under 20 minutes to complete your whole assessment. So if you're wasting time, walking all the way across the room to turn off and on the light when you're looking at the eyes, or if you're trying to, find your otoscope and you don't know where it is and it's somewhere all the way over there, you're wasting time. And to me, you want to waste as least time as you can doing these little juvenile things, and including moving your camera around and situating your patient. That takes up time, and that time adds up over time. So if you can minimize, if your light switch is, pretty close by, make sure your supplies are in front of you and that your patient can move around as they please, or however you need them to, within respect, you're not so far away from them. Make sure you do that and find a room that kind of encompasses all of that together. Another thing that I recommend is when you are working with the patient and you're videotaping, if you don't have a stool, I really recommend you get a stool or borrow one or whatever, because you're going to be working anteriorly, posteriorly, laterally throughout your exam. You do not want a chair that has a back, and even if you sit or have your patient sit this way, it's very uncomfortable for the patient. Like if you're assessing like the diaphragmatic excursion, for example, which is posteriorly. Is that a word? I don't know. Anyway, so if your patient is sitting like this, first of all, it's not really that accurate because they're kind of twisted. It's very uncomfortable for them. And then you're kind of moving your hands back here, and it's not good. If you can get a stool, that would be the best thing, so that this is not in your way. You can move around the patient as you please, and it's easier for you to either move your patient towards the camera or have the camera, move the camera around. But when you got this in the way, one, can't do your exam, and two, even if you try to do it, I don't think any professor is going to give you credit because they probably can't see you doing it with that in the way. So just keep that in mind. Getting a stool is really, really important. Another thing that I would recommend, it really just kind of depends on the stuff that you have at home. I had a cot at home, that was my dad's, and we used that for anything that he had to be supine with during the exam. So if you don't have the reason why I say to invest in a cot if you can, one, because again, it's kind of like the stool. It's not like you're in a bed where you have to assess both sides. So you're not gonna climb on the bed on one side and then do it on the other kind of more calmly. It's just, you want to make things easier on yourself and not get stressed about it, because if you're stressed, you might be a little bit more slow, or you might go too fast and you get nervous, and you are wasting time, and you really can't afford to do that because you're doing a bunch of exams which are time consuming if you don't know what you're doing. So you don't want to waste time trying to move people around here. But I recommend getting a cot, because when you're observing or assessing the abdominal area and the the extremities and all that, you can easily move around a cot, and it's easier for you to probably place the camera kind of like if the patient is laying down straight, like this is the head and this is the feet. If you have a camera kind of going down, pointing this way, that's probably the best way for you to go. And you can move yourself around here or around here. It's just easier for you to do it that way. So those two things I really recommend you have, and you can use that probably for, I use that for all of my video submissions, because it was just the easiest way to go. It was the easiest for my patient. It was the easiest way for me to move around. So really getting a stool and a cot, I think, are very, very important. So again, when you're assessing the abdominal wall, the reason I say that is because most of the time when you're doing anything supine, it's probably the heart or it's the abdominal area. But those are important parts of your assessment, that there are multiple components to it. So you want to make sure that your camera is in a position where it can stay there for a good amount of time. So there is this lamp, I don't really know what it's called, but it's like a regular lamp, and it has the parts for the lights, but they're movable. And I'll put a picture up here somewhere, and I had one of those too. That's where I put that's where I put my phone here, and I angled it down so that this side you can see everything that you need to see. And I attached this to my tripod, and I put it on the lamp, and I moved the lamp down. And I have a little video of my setup that I used for one of my video submissions, which I'll insert somewhere, and I'll show you what lamp that I'm talking about, and of course I'll try to put pictures and stuff. But if you can get creative with how you're doing things, it's going to be easier for you, and your professors are going to actually see what you're supposed to be doing. So that's another thing too. Oh, another tip is angles with your camera, phone, whatever. Make sure that if you're assessing something in the back or posterior, that you move your camera or you turn around your patient, because if you're doing you might have the most impeccable skill posteriorly of assessing the lungs, or the kidneys, or doing the CBA or whatever, and they can't see it. That is gonna it's gonna suck. I'm gonna be honest, it's gonna suck when if you get a grade back and you're like, oh my god, I knew I did it well, but they couldn't see what I was doing. And they told us that in the beginning, and sometimes some people still forget to move the camera around, move the patient around. I made sure to move my phone was moved around probably more times than my patient, because I need to make sure that if I'm gonna get points off, it's because I didn't do a skill correctly, and that I need to improve that skill, rather than they couldn't see what I was doing. You know what I'm saying? So make sure that you're moving your camera around, and that's why I really suggest getting a little tripod to move everything around. It's just easier, it's propped up, it's going to stay still. It's just so much better when you're doing your video assessment skills like that. Another thing that I recommend is to practice. Don't wing it on the day that you're supposed to turn it in and hope for the best. Really practice with your patient, because this is the only time that you're really going to get to practice on the same person over and over and over. Obviously when you have patients, you can't say, oh wait, can you come back? I forgot to do this like another day. Like, of course you might forget and come back and do it real quick, but you can't say, oh, can you come back tomorrow so I can practice again? Like, you can't do that, obviously. So this is your real time to practice as much with the patient as you can. And again, you're really not there to assess and diagnose them at that moment. You're really there to show the professors that you know how to do a health assessment, head to toe, and really understand and explain what you're doing. Which leads me to my next tip. I can't speak for all schools. I only can speak from my experience. In my experience, obviously you have inspection, palpation, auscultation, percussion, depending on what body system you're working with, and then different maneuvers and here and there. For me, it was extremely beneficial to say everything out loud. So for example, I'm going to inspect your head, and now I'm going to palpate your temporal arteries. Now I'm going to listen to your arteries with the bell of the stethoscope. Like, saying the stuff out loud really was very beneficial to me. Certain things you might be required to say out loud, like for inspection, because there's no way, if I'm looking at a patient, there is no way for you to know what I'm looking at. There's no way. So obviously you might have to say certain things, but if you're doing palpation or whatever, usually the professor can see that you're palpating versus percussing versus, auscultating and whatnot. But I think it's very beneficial to say the stuff out loud, even though it's kind of weird and you probably wouldn't necessarily say it out loud in practice, although you might, just to tell your patient kind of what you're doing next. To me, it was very beneficial because I kept practicing that way, and so when I would actually do it, I remember, okay, this is what I said and this is what I said afterwards. So it kind of helped me figure out what I was going to do next if I kind of had like a moment. And if, for example, if I'm listening to bowel sounds, I know what I'm doing, but I'm thinking of that next step. You know what I'm saying? Like, listening to all the 4 quadrants, I'm not just there like, la la, like just in like a daze. I'm thinking about the next thing that I'm going to do, because I know what I'm doing here, but I need to know the next step so I'm not wasting time. You need to have a good flow. That's why you have to practice, because you need to practice what you're doing, practice recording yourself so you know how much time that you've spent doing X, Y, and Z. Because if you only have 20 minutes and you check your time and you're at 20 minutes halfway through your exam, you got to pick up the pace. You know what I mean? Or maybe you're doing it really too quickly and you've forgotten, some parts to the exam. Sorry. So you really need to make sure that you're practicing ahead of time, because when you do it for real, you want to make sure that you got it down pat. You know, this is my step, I'm doing this next. You need to know exactly to know where the patient has to go next. You know, if they're laying down and you know that the next body system they are required to stand up, you know, make sure you're telling them what to do to reduce the amount of time. And I know I keep saying that all the time, but you really need to reduce the amount of time to be the most effective, so that you have actual time to do excuse me, to do the actual assessment, and you're not wasting time trying to say, oh my gosh, where should I put my video, because I think I need to do this anteriorly but posteriorly, you know, I'm not sure. You need to know what you're doing. You really need to know, and that's why you really need to practice. Practice with your patient so you know exactly how to maneuver them, know exactly how to use the tools like your ophthalmoscope, your otoscope, your, you know, deep tendon reflex hammer. Like, you need to know how to do these things, and the more you practice, the more comfortable you'll do it, and then all you have to do is just press play or press record. That's kind of how it is, and the more you practice, the better it'll be. And another thing that I recommend is utilizing chairs, different tables that you have around your home. You know, some people are lucky enough to be able to record their video in a clinical setting, you know, obviously like in a real doctor's office. Not all of us can do that. So you really need to make sure that your area is as doctor-like as possible, and also make sure that you have things kind of set up so you know kind of where to place your camera. In the video that I have no idea if I will show it or have shown it already, but you will see that there's tons of chairs around, there's a cot, there's the lamp that I was talking about, there's different tables around, because that's where I'm placing my camera for different angles. So for example, the one that I think I had shown, I had the abdominal area to look at, then I did musculoskeletal, and then I did you know, like reflexes. So if I did a tricep reflex and my camera's facing forward, you can't see it back there. So that's why I had my patient turn to the side. I had a table like right here, so I knew that when I did a tricep reflex that it was going to have an angle where my teacher can see. So that's why it's really important to kind of place things in different places, and it actually kind of helps you remember what to do next, because you're like, oh, I see a table, okay, I know I have to do that back here. Another thing that I also recommend, I'm sorry, this is really all over the place, I'm thinking things as I go, is to have your tools laid out. And another thing is you can kind of put the tools in an order of your exam, and that kind of helps you remember what to do next. So if you have your ophthalmoscope first, then your otoscope, then you know, you probably have your stethoscope on you or whatever, but you know, okay, now I need to do my eyes, or check the eyes, now I have to check the ears. You know, it kind of helps you remember what to do next, and it's just all your tools laid out. Whatever tools that you can have on you, again, it saves time. You can have your pen light with you, you can probably have a tongue depressor with you, your stethoscope with you, and things that may be a little bit more bigger, or you know, kind of things where you have to interchange different things. You might want to have it laid out in the order that you plan to assess your patient. So it's just really important to keep all of these things in mind. And yes, it is a lot of information. Yes, it's a lot going on, but you really want to make sure that you show your instructors that you know what you're doing, and that you get a really great grade, and that you really know what you're doing, and that you have great angles, you have great lighting, you have great setting and all of that. And the last tip that I have is to do your video submission early. Don't wait to do it on the day that it's due, because if for some reason you don't do well on your video submission, or on your video in general, you may not have time to redo it. Because like for us, so like if it was, the video submission was due on the 8th of August, or it was, whatever. So I can videotape myself doing it as many times as I please before I submit it. So if you wait till that last day and try to, you're like, oh, I know what I'm doing, I'm fine, and you record it and it's not that great, first of all, you don't want to turn it in because you might not do so well, and second of all, you might not have time to redo it. So you want to make sure that you give yourself an ample amount of time to do it. I usually did it like 3 days before it was due, and I did it a couple of times until I was satisfied with what I wanted to turn in. But if for some reason I wasn't and I want to do it the next day, I can, you know. But if you wait till the last day, it's really not going to be beneficial to you. So do it as early as you can. Make sure you turn it in, get over with, but do it in a great way. So just make sure that you practice recording yourself, because you want to make sure that the angles are good. You want to make sure that the timing is good, which is super important, that you're actually doing every single skill. You might look back and you're like, oh my gosh, I completely forgot one whole body system, which is not good, or, you know, a small little exam. But you want to make sure that you're practicing that, so you know, and you can go back and say, oh, I realized that when I was doing this exam, my whole body was in front of the patient and they can't see what I'm doing. And that way you can kind of alter the angle, alter the lighting, whatever you need to do. Just really make sure that you do it, you know, give yourself plenty of time to do it. Practice makes perfect. Take it seriously, because this is a serious situation. Like, you need to make sure that you know what you're doing health assessment wise, and know that you know your skills and all that. So make sure, you know, it's like you're the actor, you have your supporting actors, and you have, you know, lights, camera, action, you're the director, producer, videographer, whatever it is. Like, just make sure that you give it your all. It's going to be okay. It might be a little bit scary to record yourself if you're not used to it, but you'll do it. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions about what I just said, it might be a little bit all over the place, so I understand if you have questions. Please feel free to leave a comment. You can email me. Again, if you have a topic you'd like for me to discuss, please reach out to me. I'm definitely open to different topics. Since I'm in FNP school now, sometimes, you know, I don't remember as much from nursing school as obviously that I do now. I remember a lot, but there might be a topic that I'm not aware it was a necessity. So if you need to let me know that, that would be wonderful. Remember to always believe in yourself. If you need to contact me for anything, excuse me, please don't feel like you have to just leave a comment if it's more of a personal matter. In your nursing journey, you can always reach out to me through email. I hope you have a wonderful day. Remember to always believe in yourself, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!